Turn on my spotlight. I thought I had a physical copy of the book, but I didn't. I was gonna like hold it to be able to flip through it and remember stuff. But it turns out I don't actually have that.
No, why would you?
I have a lot of old sci-fi books laying around. I kind of just assumed I had a copy of Doom, and maybe I do, but I couldn't find it. All right, I guess we're good to go. All right. Oh, is OBS doing the thing? All right, give me a sec. I think OBS is using the wrong mix. Because it crashed Audition. Oh, no, there it goes. That was weird. Whoop! All right, seems good. Brad's going. 95 degrees outside.
It's real nice outside today.
Yeah, it's great. I wanted to bike, but I had a meeting. Angle the Scott cam a little bit. Stop streaming. Oh, there's already like 4 people in here. That's interesting.
People are so sad.
Others I want to talk about Dune.
They're
It's
sad.
like the people who've read Wheel of Time really want to talk about the Wheel of Time.
You know, you're better off just not reading Wheel of Time.
I enjoyed it. I don't regret that experience. I'm not going to read another fantasy series.
My
like
life's
that.
only so long.
That didn't take me that long to read those books.
My life is only so long.
All right. And it's Thursday, July 20th, 2017. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And tonight on the GeekNights Book Club, we're talking about Dune by Frank Herbert. Just the first book, none of that other nonsense. All right. Let's see. Only see them played the games. Yeah, people already listen to this who've never read the books. That's funny.
Mm.
Whoop, whoop. So last night I actually went to a concert, down at the Highline Ballroom. That was pretty good.
Okay.
I went to see the Aquabats. Which,
Isn't that a band for children?
ostensibly, yes.
I mean, my sister liked them when she was still pre-college age.
Well, they had like a kids show, but they're basically like a neo-ska band, and they play real music.
Yeah.
And it was a good show. Like, I was glad I went. And it was interesting because a lot of the audience was like a third parents with like young kids, a third people our age, and a third people older than us who were just like really into the Aquabats.
That's weird. I didn't know about the older group.
Though, you know what the opening acts were? Reggie and the Full Effect, which was...
I've heard of that.
There was an interesting set they did, and then actually Dune came up, which is why I mentioned this.
What the hell?
So he plays these songs that are kind of weird. It's almost like a joke band. They come out and they're all dressed like the Cobra Kai, and then the main guy comes out and he's dressed up like Daniel-san from Karate Kid, and he does like a song and stand up and kind of back and forth. And he tells this anecdote where he was like, I guess, drunk or something, and he went to see Showgirls in the theater, which I've never actually seen.
I haven't seen that either.
Apparently, the dude who played Paul Atreides in one of the Dune adaptations is a character. He plays a character in that movie.
The only thing I know about Showgirls is that the girl from Saved by the Bell gets naked.
Oh yeah, that is the other thing that I knew about.
That's the only
movie.
thing. That's the only thing I know about that movie. It was like a big deal because it was. When it came out, it was NC-17 and not X, so it was actually in movie theaters.
And his anecdote was around that, how like it's kind of shameful that he went to see that movie because that movie's not good.
No,
but apparently because the person who played Paul Atreides is in this movie playing some other character, he tells this long anecdote where he's there seeing the movie on like opening night and the theater's packed, and that dude comes on screen and he just sort of blurts out like "Maudib, Maudib." And one other person in the audience laughed.
Muad'Dib?
I don't even know.
If someone just
I've
says
never seen any of the adaptations.
If someone just goes Maudib, Maudib, I don't know what the fuck that means.
Yeah,
it's
one person in the crowd
Muad'Dib.
apparently
Muad'Dib.
laughed at it.
Yeah, you
All
can
right,
see there's an apostrophe.
How do you
in there.
pronounce Kwisatz Haderach? Haderach?
Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah. All right. Well, apparently it's like real close to this Kabbalah word for someone who can teleport. I read
Yes.
a little bit up on Dune.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you know Kabbalah?
Mm-hmm.
Can you cast Kabbalah spells?
Mm-mm.
So anyway, yeah, the concert was great. But you know who the other opening act was? CJ Ramone, as in the old lead singer of the Ramones, and they just did like classic punk, and it was awesome.
Okay.
So it was a pretty good show.
All
And
right.
Dune came up, which was weird. And then like there was this long segment where he keeps telling all these Dune jokes, and half the audience gets it, and half the audience has no idea what's going on. And then that was just interesting, and that's all I had there. And I'm just killing time before. All right. Yes. Things of the day. So what do you got? Actually, I can see it here, but tell the crowd what you got.
So this is someone runs this website called what?
Gamesbyemail.com.
It's a website where you can play games by email, and a lot of those games involve dice and randomness, right? So people who are dedicated enough to play a game by email are the kind of person who's really going to care about the randomness of those dice.
And they don't probably know enough about dev random to realize that that's actually pretty legit random.
I'm just saying. So basically, the website was originally coded just to use the random number generators that are in computers, which are fine for games like this.
Yep.
But people complained about the randomness. Like they complained like they were winning or losing because the randomness was no good. Because people can't tell what's random.
Yep.
So people were like, according to this article by the creator of this website, were like putting more effort in writing like dissertations on the bad randomness of gamesbyemail.com. So the creator of gamesbyemail.com made a machine that physically rolls actual goddamn dice.
200,000 rolls a day.
200,000 dice rolls a day, and uses computer vision to look at the dice to capture the numbers that they have rolled, and then it uses those numbers to, for all of the games by email. So you cannot possibly complain about the randomness. And even
people still complain.
People still complain because people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. But, if you're really upset, he'll send you some dice from the thing.
Well, he'll crush them and send them to you as an example to the other dice.
Sure.
The funniest thing about this is that he points out that one side effect of the way he built it is that it destroys the dice, and there's a high rate of die attrition.
Dice can only roll so many times before they disintegrate.
Yeah, casino dice, like, they wear out real fast, actually.
They change the dice in the casino, like, constantly.
Now, I imagine, actually, this gives me a cool idea, at a con like PAX, or especially PAX Unplugged.
Like, if you think about how much the dice in a casino roll in a day, even unfelt, like, if you didn't change them, you'd have, like, balls in, like, some weeks.
Well, because,
it'd be really smooth.
If I play
erosion.
Burning Wheel, I roll my dice like 6 times tops in a given night.
Yeah, if you just played Burning Wheel all day, every day, though, your dice would turn into balls due to erosion really
I've
quickly.
seen some ball-looking Warhammer dice before.
I know, right? So...
but imagine, like in a fancy wedding, you have like the champagne fountain or some nonsense, or the chocolate fountain.
Yeah, you want to have a dice fountain?
Imagine at the middle of PAX Unplugged, there's a dice fountain, and in the PAX app, you could just ask it for die rolls from that thing during PAX.
Mm-hmm.
That would be like the cool, weird thing to do.
I'm just saying, check out this cool dice rolling machine.
It's pretty cool. Like it's legit impressive.
I would, I don't really even.
It only rolls D6.
I wish he would start a service where, like, I don't want to play any games by email. I just want an app on my phone where, like, if I need a real dice roll, I can get one from there.
Yeah, especially if it showed me a picture of the dice. I feel like that would like seal the deal with people who don't understand RNG.
Mm-hmm.
So. All I got is, way back, Undertale was a fantastic game, and I love the hell out of it. But the fandom around it kind of got, like, pony level of creation of stuff. And people made all these, like, animatics and cool things. And I just noticed recently that one of those animatics, they actually went and finished the entire animation. Like, they made the thing, and it's done, and it's out there.
Okay.
And it's actually, like, really super well done. And it's the fight you see between a character and another character that is spoiler that you'll only see if you do a genocide route and murder people. Mm-hmm. And it's just super well done, and I'm really impressed with it. And I'm extra impressed that some fan animatic stuff turned into a finished thing, because oftentimes you see a YouTube thing that's like work in progress, and that is literally the last thing ever uploaded on that account.
Okay.
So I'm impressed by the fact that this finished, and it's legit good. And also, if you don't want to do the genocide run, which I didn't because I'm not a bad person, you can see some of the stuff that you wouldn't see otherwise in the game. And that's that. Other than in the meta moment, the book club book is Dune. Talking about it in like 2 minutes.
I selected a new book club book.
Oh, so what is the new book club book?
Let me find it. Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So,
because unlike Ram, it doesn't take me long to select a new book club book.
All I'm going to warn you about is that if you did not read Dune, we're going to spoil Dune. And Dune's pretty straightforward. but
I
at the
mean, I
same
feel
time-
like Dune, like
So Dune
so
was
for-
already spoiled. Like when
Dune
I
is
read
so
it,
old that the
statute of limitations.
statute of limitations is out. Like I knew a lot of shit about Dune before I read it.
Well,
so
I don't think any event that happened in this book surprised me.
no. But anyway, so
Other than that, the Baron was way worse than I thought.
the next book club book is there's this lady in Brooklyn. I think she still lives in Brooklyn. I saw her at Gamer X last year, but I mean I knew about her before then.
Oh, right, that book.
Yeah. So she's got a lot of books. So her name is.
But you talked about this book. You
right,
wanted to do
Her
it.
name is N.K. Jemisin, right? And she apparently writes these fantasy novels that are like the hotness right now. Or they've been the hotness for like a year or two, but fantasy novels, you got time. You don't got to stay on top of those and read them as soon as they come out.
Unless it's a Prince of Nothing.
I'm
which-
just saying. But we even read the first Prince of Nothing how long after it came out, right?
Yeah, like 3 cycles of our friends had already read that book before we read it.
Right. It's like, so it's still the new hotness because books are slow compared to, say, YouTube.
Yeah.
So I think this is like, she's got a lot of books in there if you go to Amazon, but apparently the hottest book is this series, which is about the Broken Earth. So the Broken Earth book number 1 is called The 5th Season, and the cover's green, which is good.
Huh?
Because some of the other covers are like red or blue. So we'll read the
Careful. The cover of, I think, the 3rd of that horrible trilogy, Dragon's Gold, Serpent's Silver, Chimera's Copper, was green.
I'm just saying.
Just saying.
So I actually started reading like a chapter of this book.
It's $3 on Kindle.
Yeah. I started reading one chapter of this book before I switched to Dune, not because this was no good, but because I had to read the book.
I just bought it, so.
So, yeah, this is like praised by everybody like that you ever knew. This is got like so much praise. This
won
book.
the Hugo Award for Best Novel.
Yeah,
in
this is like
2016.
this book is a huge hotness in the world of fantasy. It's like people who know like whose main nerdery is fantasy type, sci-fi type novels. Those kind of nerds. They're like all over this already. Like this, But if you're just a regular old nerd, and that's sort of off to the side, well, this is what you're missing apparently. So let's find out what the deal is.
All right, I'm into it. But be warned, the last of the Prince of Nothing books is coming out imminently.
5 days, supposedly.
So I think we're going to read that first, and then we're going to jump on this book.
But
so you got a little
that
bit of
doesn't
time.
count as book club, though.
No, that's just the ongoing. That's like our favorite fantasy book series for some reason.
Right.
Something about it.
Something about it.
Yeah. We'll see how it ends.
Mostly the horses and men getting broken.
I just the literal the broken horse.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I should have seen that coming.
Mm-hmm.
But should have seen Yue's betrayal coming because the book literally says from like page 3.
I did see it coming. I was
Yeah.
just waiting to see.
I think everyone sees what's coming. So yeah, we're talking about Dune. So last warning: if you somehow
You're not
don't
going to do any meta moments?
the next book club was that.
Oh.
Oh yeah, we're going to be at PAX West doing at least one panel. We're doing a much updated and rewritten panel on quitting, focusing more on specifically people who quit because they're butter.
Translation barely changed because we had new ideas. We had no new ideas.
I think
so
it is going to be significantly changed.
Barely
'cause
changed.
We ran that old quitting panel again at Kineticon, and I actually have a much more specific and nuanced point I want to make about quitting.
Insignificantly changed.
I think it'll be significantly changed.
Doesn't have any new ideas for panels.
Actually,
Just trying to get a free ticket again.
I did submit like 3 other panels, but this is one they wanted. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Otherwise, I think the next con after that is going to be PAX Unplugged, which we'll be at doing a bunch of panels, and then PAX Australia, which I'm very likely to be at, and I'm 100% confident that our friend Ro is also going to be there. Because, well, we'll talk about that on the next Tuesday show. But for the first time ever, Geek Nights has an official champion in the Omegathon finale at the Mothership
not
PAX.
finale. You got to make it to the finale.
I'm pretty much Babe Ruthin. I'm pre-Babe Ruthing her.
That's a bad idea. Don't do that.
Ro is pro. Ro is like the most pro we know.
Yeah, but the Omegathon might have a random round 2 or some shit. And
Oh,
then,
it will.
And then what?
It will.
And then what?
But usually the random isn't like in or out. It's the bottom of a pile is going to be knocked out.
I'm just saying.
I mean,
you
it
never
can
know what
happen.
can happen.
Well, either we're going to be going crazy at the Omegathon finale because Ro is pro, or we're going to be heckling mercilessly whoever it is that knocked Ro out.
I think we're just going to be heckling mercilessly either way.
Yeah. We've never been this invested in an Omegathon before.
Why would we be?
Yeah. It's extra fitting because the first PAX we ever went to, Ro, who was just like a listener, like a fan of Geek Nights, offered to pick us up at the airport, and we just trusted the stranger to like show up at the airport and like literally pick us up and drive us to a hotel. And it totally happened, and it was cool. So that. Otherwise, our YouTube channels are going. We're live streaming this podcast, so you can actually watch like my sweaty butt talking about.
You don't need to do that.
There are.
You don't even need to be listening to this. Like you should, if you're listening to Geek Nights, surely there must be some better way you could be spending this hour of your life.
There are 9 people watching us live right now.
The 9 saddest people.
And there are way more than 9 messages in this chat.
9 sad messages.
There are, in fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
There's only
7,
one
8.
non.
Oh no, there's actually exactly 9 messages in the chat.
And there's one message that is not sad, so it's actually only 8 sad messages.
No, these guys, they seem pretty chill. They're happy.
No, there's one message that's not sad.
I think your message is the only sad one.
That's the not sad one.
Even though I have the same policy. But anyway, I digress. We're talking about Dune. We're talking about Frank Herbert's 1965 epic science fiction novel called Dune.
Right, so this is like one of the legendary nerd books of all time, and we never read it into completion before.
Yep.
In middle school, I've said this before, but we got to say everything about the book in the actual episode about the book, right? I think in middle school or something, I don't even remember-ish, I tried to read it because it was such a famous nerd book, and I did not get very far and was unpleased with it. And then for a long period of my life, especially at RIT, nerds would talk about Dune on occasion because that's going to happen. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm not into Dune. I don't know what the deal is.
I don't know why I never finished it.
Similar to why
I don't
I'm
even
not
have
into Star Trek either.
I just sort of, like, I always heard that people talked about Dune a lot, and I read a little bit of it, and I just didn't care that much, and I was into really dumb fantasy novels back then.
But yeah, as time went on, just by being a nerd and living in the internet and knowing nerds, I learned things about Dune because that's how it happens. And we played the Dune game, which is quite a good game.
And actually, I have a lot more to say about that game now that I read this book.
Oh, yeah. But anyway.
We'll save that talk for the end, though.
Right. So I said, we got this book club going on. Even, we did the Wheel of Time on basically the same premise, right?
Yep.
Which was like, hey, because you're a nerd, good or bad, you sort of have to read this.
And a side effect of that was I actually just read all of the Wheel of Time.
Anyway, but which you see wouldn't have even read one of those if not for me selecting it, right?
I ain't going to do that with Dune.
So I said, well, you ain't a nerd if you haven't read the Dune, good or bad, so let's read the Dune.
So the most important thing I want to
get
get out there is that, one, despite having not read it until now, it is exactly what I thought it was. Nothing was surprising at all, and I already knew almost the entire plot just from casual pop culture interaction.
In the first, there are all these proper nouns about Dune that I vaguely knew what they meant.
I had them all straight in like a few pages.
Right, but in like the first chapter, every single one of those proper nouns is introduced.
But then they're all
every
explained.
single one of them.
Like right away, they're all explained explicitly.
A lot of them get explained explicitly pretty much right away, but the one thing I think that they're lacking is that I'm going to compare it to Prince of Nothing because that's how we do.
This is like 90%. I'm going to be comparing this to Prince of Nothing.
But anyway, in Prince of Nothing, it's proper. It's even more proper noun hell. However, the Prince of Nothing uses, Latin roots and, roots itself, its proper nouns in real world languages.
Which this does too.
In a way that you can infer the meaning of the word just from how it feels to read and say, whereas Dune does not do that. Kwisatz Haderach doesn't mean shit to you
it means
until you get that explanation.
Unless
right?
If you know Kabbalah, it's like a spell, I guess, in the Kabbalah.
Maybe, but in Prince of Nothing, if someone says
Ionia or whatever.
Ionia sounds like the name of a country. And it is, and it kind of feels like the name of a country. Like Ionia wouldn't be a name of a beverage or a person, right? Because it ends in ia. Right? It's like, oh, that feels
Does it end
like
in IA or just E? I don't remember.
Well, Ionia is
Well, I'm saying with the the Ioni people.
Right. So that
Ionia is a Greek. Anyway.
Right, but I'm saying to say like Ione, it's like, oh, that feels like it just feels like your name wouldn't be Ione.
So
Right?
I'd say that a
It
lot
feels like
of
the
the
name
Dune
of a
words
people, like
are
because when you read it in context, it's like the Ione.
But a lot of the words in Dune are like based in languages and have some reasonable context, but a lot of them aren't. But more importantly, rather than just being used by characters and then you infer meaning the same way you infer meaning in the real world when you talk to people, Dune introduces terms and then sort of just explicitly explains what they are. It never just casually uses a word and waits for you to figure it out. It explains what it all is at some point. And also some of like the provenance of these words, like the etymology, like what they seem to be based on, is just like a vague smattering of like Arabic and Persian and Hebrew and stuff, just sort of all mixed up. And some of the like Chimerki, that was not that important, and I was shocked at how specifically they focused on the different kinds of poisons.
Yeah.
Which is kind of plotty.
Poison.
The other thing is that the book is really straightforward and the characters are really simple and the world that is constructed is actually also pretty simple.
Yeah, like there's nothing fancy about it, right? You know, it's like
There's no mysteries. There's literally
even Wheel of Time is fancier. It's like, ooh, like what's the deal? What's the deal? In Dune, you're never asking what's the deal. Even the stuff they try to keep in mystery, like the Guild, it's like, oh, and
no, the cage just blows his load. Like,
it's like you can just
the
sort
Guild spaceman loses his contact in the end, and you see his eyes are blue, and you're like, oh, I see what's going on.
But I knew that they were fucked. I knew they were fucked up on spice a long time ago.
You knew that before you read the books,
because it always talks about how even in the book, it right away it talks about how like the Guild loves this. They keep buying all the spice. They're selling all the spice to the Guild, and then it's like, oh, it's supposed to be a big reveal that the Guild guy has blue eyes too.
That might have been a bigger reveal if not for the fact that we knew a lot about Dune.
No, they tell you earlier in the book that like the Guild people are buying all the spice directly
but
from
they
the
also
Fremen.
make a big point about how the Emperor and the Guild and the Harkonnen are all hoarding spice because it's literally the most valuable thing in the world. And because there's that big plot, they're obviously hoarding it to corner the market when the plot happens. Like, the book does set up all these rational explanations, and it is easy to feel like we figured stuff out earlier, partly because
there's no figuring stuff out earlier. Like at one point, Paul has like one of his visions, and it's like, yeah, he had a vision. It's like literally like, oh, he had a vision of the future where he's a pilot of a Guild spaceship all fucked up on spice, and it's like, oh, well, they just
that's
told us.
already halfway through the book, though.
Right, but it's like they just tell it to you,
Well, yeah.
and that's way before the end of the book where this Guild guy loses contact lens.
Yep.
Right.
But at the same time, it causes a sort of interesting thing that I haven't seen in a lot of books, where to compare it to The Prince of Nothing or Wheel of Time, when you're in a perspective of a character, you tend to be there for a while. Like you're in some random character's head. Like you're in the, Acamian's head in The Prince of Nothing.
Because each chapter will be coming like from a specific character. In Dune, there's just sort of this narrator, right?
Well, you jump between the characters' heads a lot.
Yeah.
And you get their exact thoughts, like in the same, like it's best, there's one scene in the book, that dinner party, which is probably my favorite scene in the entire book. And it's literally like all the big important characters, where most of them are at this dinner party, and it's one of those like high political tension, like everyone, like what's going, all these people have different motivations, what do they want, what's that guy gonna do, like everyone's posturing and there's intrigue and drama, but every character's motivation is explicitly explained to you, the reader. You literally know everyone's secret, everyone's motivation, everyone's everything throughout that entire scene.
Right. I told you, this is an omniscient narrator just sort of telling you the story.
Well, kind of like how Paul Atreides becomes omniscient.
Right, but it's not, a lot of books will use sort of like narrative devices, like, first person storytelling, or like Saga, you have like the daughter is telling the story from when she's older about her baby years, right? Like, oh, my parents, such and such, right? Dune is literally using no fancy writing techniques whatsoever. It's just a narrator and dialogue between characters.
You'll be in one character's perspective and like, what are those Bene Gesserit up to? And then it cuts to Jessica, and Jessica's like, I am up to X, Y, and Z.
Right.
That is what I want.
It reads the way that like a D&D book would read. Like, or like it's written the same way that, much better, obviously. But
actually, no, those D&D books are not like that. Those D&D books hide everything from you.
No, not in terms of the hiding in the information, but in terms of just the fact that it's a narrator, just telling you what's happening, right? It's not written in a fancy, there's no sort of device, right?
Yeah.
In the way that it's told.
Well, the prose is pretty simple too, but that's not what I want to focus on yet. But I feel like the story is actually kind of the same story that Hyperion is trying to tell, and that parts of the Prince of Nothing are trying to tell. A lot of things, obviously,
You mean things that came after this?
Yeah, crib from Dune. But the story is just...
I mean, it is one of those situations where something is such a big deal in the nerd world, and it's so famous, but you didn't read it, and when you go back to it, you realize, oh, all the things we're borrowing or referencing or homaging this, and I missed it.
Scott, I read a spoiler. So in one of the later Dune books, there's a group of people called the Face Dancers. They can do the thing with their faces to look like anyone, just like the what's-its in The Prince of Nothing. Like that exact same thing.
Yep.
But the story is just humanity has this like transhumanist crisis because they invent AI and they have nuclear weapons. And it's almost like if you look at the culture books are the what if humans just embrace transhumanism and become crazy different?
Awesome.
And Dune is what if humans freak out and try to remain human forever? And the only story here is that you have this existence of humanity that had this like transhumanist crisis, and it's just, they mentioned it as the Butlerian Jihad, where they basically said, thou shalt not disfigure
This
the soul.
all happens way before the beginning of the book.
Yeah, but it's explained pretty explicitly. Like
Yes.
there's nothing.
They just tell it to you.
Yeah, especially in that appendix.
The history of the human race is not like a mystery to the humans.
Humans decide you can't make technology that will replace humans. You can't change humans. Humans have to be human as they are now, literally forever, and they eschew all technology that could make humans different.
Right. It's weird though, but they keep some technology. They still have. They're like it's weird. They'll be fighting with swords and knives and poisons and things. But they'll also be using like ridiculous fancy poison detecting machines.
Yeah, the snoopers.
And they'll also be using like laser guns and shields.
But they don't use other weapons. Like they use swords, dart guns.
They have ridiculous
laser guns.
They have ridiculous spaceships, some sort of ornithopter flying device. Like there's some level of fancy technology that is simultaneously high but also low, and it really feels a lot like the kind of technology that you see in Star Wars, right? Where it's simultaneously fancy. This X-wing could enter hyperspace and go somewhere else, but look at it. It's a piece of shit, right? So it's an ornithopter. Look at this. It can fly around, and it can survive in this crazy storm, kind of. But it's obviously not really a great flying device. It's kind of a piece of shit, right?
But the storytelling there is kind of an interesting, subtle thing, and it's pretty consistent. Because remember I mentioned, like, there's so much focus on those proper nouns of different kinds of poison and all that. The society that humans have built is this, like, static thing where the rules of conflict, like, if humans have a conflict, the rules are very specific and designed to ensure that individual humans matter a lot, and the technology does not. If you want to assassinate someone, there are specific rules of the kinds of poison to use and rules of the ways you can try to detect and stop that poison. Like, if you want to fight someone in a
Obviously,
duel...
all these rules only matter for, like, these ultra-elite people who run the galaxy universe.
Oh, yeah, no one else matters. Normal humans don't matter at all.
It's really only a story of, courts and emperors and kings and dukes, and not really a story of normal people.
Yep.
They don't matter too much.
Well, yeah, we can talk a little about normal people.
Other than as followers or supporters of, it's a very feudal system they built here.
Well, yeah, it's literally feudalism, like the 10,000 years.
There is no democracy involved.
But every rule, like the rules of atomics, and like the rule of have the fight with someone with knives, which comes up in a bunch of points.
I didn't use atomics on people. I atomicked that terrain, and that just happened to let this horrible storm through that ruined you.
But the rules are so specific to ensure that among the people who run society, an individual human will be making decisions and matter a lot, and nothing else will matter. And that definitely fits into this rule of humans must remain human, and it's this arbitrary definition of humanity at this certain point in time, probably right about the year after the Butlerian Jihad ended. And the whole story of Dune seems to be that the Bene Gesserit and like making of the mentats and all these things, like the breeding programs, are everybody trying to skirt the rules to make non-humans, yet they refuse to actually let them be fully non-human, so they still constrain them, and as a result, they fail. And the story at the end of this book, I feel like, is Paul Atreides, who is the best mentat, and he's basically the Dunyane, like the end of all that line of genetics and nonsense. the moral of the story is what you made is not human.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot remain static. And the entire book is just telling that story.
Yeah, pretty much.
Humans are static, they're uniform, they're boring, and they suck. And transhumanism is the right way to go. The culture is the right way, not this.
But I think what's also interesting is that, in putting, they were able to put down technology to some extent only because there's also magic, right?
Yep.
There's a lot, even though it's a sci-fi.
Though arguably
It's a sci-fi with the space and the lasers, but it's also the fantasy.
Well,
just,
so
just
what
like
parts?
the Star Wars again.
The prescience is coached in terms of higher order beings, like the AIs and things that they jihaded against, could access other dimensions. The Bene Gesserit stuff in the appendix kind of says this explicitly, that their goal in making the Kwisatz Haderach was to make a multidimensional human. But the problem is the multidimensional human is not human, it's the multidimensional being. But the prescience could be, it can be explained by that stuff.
Yep.
And also the way Paul sees the future is definitely, because you know how there's like the blind spots he can't see? It's definitely coached in terms of it's actually just a supercomputer in his mentat brain calculating based on all the information he has what would have occurred. Kind of like a domain.
I think it's also sort of bowing to the sort of possibly true scientific idea that there's basically existing dimensions for all possible futures, and they collapse into, right? So there are certain nexus points in which you can't really tell which one you're gonna collapse into because you know, right? And then as you move as you're slowly going through dimension after dimension, it becomes more obvious which ones are more probable than others. Quantum mechanics, ish kind of thing, right? It's like they never say any of that explicitly, but it sort of leans to similar conceptual ideas to that sort of real world science in some ways.
Yep. But there's a few points when Paul's having his awakening where he definitely, like, it's sort of implied that the parts he can't see are because he doesn't have enough input into his mentat brain, and actually, he's just a magic computer now.
Yeah.
Like, he's just a fancy computer. There's one little scene I like where I think his father is like, blah, 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 son, you could be a mentat if you want to be. And he's like, but that's stupid. I'm like, obviously you weren't training me. I mean, and then he realizes that mentats can't be told that they're being trained. And then he's like, oh, shit. You didn't tell me because I am a mentat.
Yeah. So his dad is the best guy in the whole book.
Yeah, he's got flaws. He's not like the best person.
No,
but he's a pretty good person by the standards of this fucked up society.
Right. It's like whenever I read some fantasy story, I always want to read the story about like the great. It's always like there's always used to be a kingdom that was great and its ass got crumbled, and now you're reading the story. Right?
Like in Prince of Nothing, you want to read about Seswatha and you get stuck with a Camian.
And in here, at least we get a chapter of the Duke in his home place. That's awesome. What's the name of that awesome planet they're from?
Caledon.
Yeah, it's like I just want to read like is there a prequel book about just like awesome parties on Caladan?
I think there is a prequel, but I have it on good authority that I should not read any more Dune books.
I also have that good authority, and I don't plan on wasting my time with it.
It was described best as every further work is a diminishing returns situation.
Yeah, but it's like, this Duke is an awesome Duke, and he just got moved to this other planet by the Emperor for political reasons.
Yep.
Right? And it's like, even though he's now
he's
longer...
only awesome in the context of that feudal nightmare society.
Sure, right, but he's like, as far as kings go, he's legit good. You could call this guy a good king.
Well, like there's that scene where he goes out to see the spice harvest, and he risks his life and his son's life to save those people, and he's very clear, like, fuck the machines, fuck the spice, save those individual, like, 6 humans down there, and everyone's freaking out about it. In any other novel, you would wonder if he did that because he actually cared about those people, or if it was a clever ploy to, like, get the Fremen on his side. But because
it doesn't matter.
But because you know the character's motivations, it's obvious that he does actually care about the people.
Yeah, no, he's legit like awesome Duke guy, and it's like, damn, it's like I like that guy. It's like I always want to see like the badass, heroic, actually good king.
Well, like actually, if the story, if Yue had not betrayed, and the entire book was just them trying to avoid the trap that the Harkonnen have set,
that would have been awesome.
Yeah, if the whole book was just like that dinner party and just kept going until they won, I would have enjoyed it just as much.
Yeah, actually, and you could have just ended it.
Yeah.
I do like, even though that there are more Dunes, and clearly Frank Herbert intended there to be more Dunes, right, from the get-go, because he didn't say everything he had to say in the one book. It still stands alone as itself as a complete book that doesn't feel like you need like if there had never been another Dune at all,
Yep.
you wouldn't feel like you were missing anything.
That is a big difference from like other fantasy series, like Loch Lamora, The Wheel of Time. Every book ends and you're like, I really got to know what happens next.
Yeah, it's like it really feels like there's supposed to be a volume 2 a lot of times when there's a volume 1, even if they didn't get a guaranteed contract to write a volume 2. It feels like that they intended for one from the get-go, but here, no, this is a standalone book. You can pretend the other ones don't even exist, no problem.
And the end is
It has
actually
a solid ending.
pretty satisfying. Like, it's one of those situations of let's get all the characters who are important, who are still alive in one room, and kill some of them, and then let's get them all in one room again, whoever's left, and resolve every plot thread.
And it's surprisingly, that ending part, the only thing negative about the ending part is it feels kind of rushed.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they get them all in one room, and then everything happens real fast.
Yep, like Hawat pops out, and he was the only one where I wasn't 100% sure what he was going to do in that scene at the end. But I realized, I looked back and flipped through, he was set up, all the other characters are like, Hawat's dangerous. What's Hawat up to? Is he really on their Harkonnen side? But if you read what he actually does, he's just fucking with the Baron Harkonnen the entire time. Just like waiting for his moment to betray that dude.
Yeah.
Actually, I think my favorite character, I keep saying it's Keynes or Kynes, like Liet Kynes.
I think it's Kynes because it's a Y. If it was Keynes, it would be K-E-A or something.
But I actually really like, and I remembered this guy just a second ago, the Count Fenring.
Oh, that's definitely a Rim character for sure.
Yeah,
that guy's totally like, oh, but he's also ridiculously badass.
There was a really good scene. This is also one of my favorite.
You know what? You know who Count Fenring reminds me of?
Kefka.
Like he's that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Only less ridiculously evil.
But there's that. But he's also honorable.
Aesthetically, he seems the same.
Yeah, but unlike Kefka, he's actually honorable.
Like if you had to draw a picture of him,
I'd draw Kefka.
Like they could share wardrobes, I imagine, even though there's not exactly the same.
There's that moment where I think he's talking to the Baron, and he talks like, "So Baron." Like he's humming and hmming all the time, and you're like, God, what the fuck, dude? And then the next scene is someone like he basically like it says, yes, him and his wife were talking in their private humming language, and you're like, oh, they were just talking to each other right in front of this stupid Baron's face and plotting against him. And he didn't even realize it. The Baron is not the smartest. He's not as capable as I expected him to be from playing the game.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is with the Baron, right?
Everybody was playing him. Literally everyone.
It's weird in that he's not like completely incompetent, right?
No.
He's not like one of those like really stupid, bumbling, know-nothing bad guys.
His plan was pretty good.
Right. It's like you see a lot of like, I guess in a lot of kids stuff, especially where the bad guy is like bad.
Skeletor.
Yeah, Skeletor is a great example of
He's
like
bad, and he's bad at being bad.
right, or like, Megatron like messes up every time. Or Cobra Commander messes up every time. And the bad guy who's actually skilled and really dangerous doesn't really do too much, right? But here it's like, yeah, he is a bad guy who is not nearly as good at anything as anyone else around him, right?
Yep.
Even the person that he wants to be his successor is better than he is at everything in life. But he's actually, I mean, his plan to get, kill the Duke and like it worked, right? It's like he got, he's not completely, he's like actually has skills, which actually is good because it just shows you how really awesome everyone else is.
Yeah,
right?
he would be dangerous.
It's like this pretty dangerous dude is actually chump change compared to all these actually really
like
amazing
Jessica
people.
or Stilgar or any of those people.
Right, So it's like, and that makes everyone in the book, even though there's not really any superheroes besides Computer Man Paul.
Arguably Stilgar, like some of the Fremen.
Stilgar's not, I mean, they're just super at fighting because they lived in the harsh desert.
True.
Right?
Well, the Sardaukar.
But that's another example of the same technique, right? The Sardaukar, right, are presented as like these ultimate fighting Navy SEAL SEAL space dudes of super dangerousness.
And they
right?
were.
And they are. But Fremen kick their asses in like a fight. Like one Fremen is worth like 5 Sauerdaukars.
Yup.
So I'm pronouncing it that way on purpose, by the way.
Well, there's all those scenes too around the prison
and
planet
by
stuff.
using this relative technique where you present one thing as being really strong, and then you present something else as kicking that thing's ass, it makes the thing that kicked ass seem so awesome. And so nerds love all these powerful epic dudes. It's like D&D with everyone's level 20. Oh
Yup.
shit, son. Get your nerd jerk off on. Woo!
Meanwhile, based on popular media, I kind of expected Duncan Idaho to have a lot more screen time.
Yeah.
And he was Indiana Jones, and then he just died like right away.
Well,
and that
I
was
think
the end of him.
it's true for like there's a lot of characters in here.
Like Peter DeVry, he's just dead like right away.
Right. There are a lot of characters that have a name, and it's a name that I knew even before reading the book. For example, Beast Raban is the one that comes to mind first, right?
Yep.
It's like, dude, the dude's name is Beast. And he's like, Beast Raban. That, first of all, that's really nice to say. Like, that you imagine just knowing nothing about Dune, you imagine a character in a fantasy novel named Beast Raban, and it's like, that's got to be awesome, dude. That sounds like someone that Kenshiro punches in the head a few times and takes like an extra punch to explode.
Is he ever in more than like you never actually see
Right.
any of him administering Arrakis?
They talk about Beast Raban like 10 or 20 times in the book. You only actually see Beast Raban like once, and
maybe
like
twice.
Maybe twice. All he does is like talk to the Baron for a second, and that's it. And then he's dead, and it's like there's such a big character, but you know nothing about them actually.
Well, like Peter DeVry gets a bunch of screen time. You're like, wow, this guy is going to be a big part. Oh, whoa, he's dead. Okay.
Yeah, Duncan Idaho. This name keeps coming up. People keep talking.
So I learned
about
why
Duncan Idaho.
in the later books. They keep resurrecting they use his DNA and they keep bringing like clones of him back.
Yeah, Scott Johnson's told us that.
Yeah, so that's why everyone talks about Duncan Idaho.
But not nothing about in real life. I'm saying just in this book.
Oh, he's
Duncan Idaho's name comes up as characters talk about him or think about him.
Yep.
But his actual presence on the pages where he's in the scene, right, where you see him doing something or he's actually doing something of note in the time frame of this story from the time they land on Dune to the end. Not much Duncan Idaho action, really.
Yep, a lot more Gurney Halleck action.
I just imagine him as Indiana Jones. Of course, Indiana Jones didn't exist when this book was written.
Yep.
So I wonder how much Indiana Jones is based on Duncan Idaho.
But meanwhile, Gurney Halleck, who no one had talked about ever, I didn't really know who that character was.
Was actually a major character and is like one of the top characters.
Yeah, and he's also great. Like I really like him.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you take Gurney Halleck and he has sex with Fenring, Rim comes out.
Yep. Well, because Gurney came from one of those prison type planets.
Yeah.
So he's like that powerful.
Yeah, he's a powerful dude and a bard. He's spoony and strong.
Yep. Let's go. You know what he reminds me of too? The bard guy in the Wheel of Time.
He just reminds me of Bard Guy at the beginning of fucking Final Fantasy VI.
Yep, Bard Guy.
That's how generic this is. I could pick
6, or are you thinking of 4?
No, the guy that I always name Scott. What's his actual name?
That doesn't help because you name like everyone.
The first guy you meet that's not the magical girl in Final
Locke?
Fantasy.
He's not a bard.
It still feels like that guy.
The only bard is in Final Fantasy IV.
Well, that guy's too spoony. He's more like Fenring.
Yeah. He's not that dangerous though either.
No, he's not.
Let's just go through all the characters because they're so simple that we can say like a few words about every character. Paul Atreides, it's just like this. It's interesting because we get this sort of coming of age story.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a coming of age story. He's the main character.
He's the only character in the entire novel who at any point evolves, I think.
Yeah, but it's still like, fantasy about being a super powerful guy. Woo! And so he's a super powerful, perfect guy.
Yeah, we already talked about
He has some internal struggles, but it's mostly the struggle of, oh my God, I have too much power. What the fuck?
Yep, he's like, I want to fuck over the Harkonnens and the Emperor and get my revenge, and I want to save the people of this planet, but I don't want them to jihad the universe.
Yes,
and
that's the one thing that keeps you, I guess, not just sort of. That's the one thing that keeps him tied to humanity and not just be like at first like you can really get identify with him because he's just he's like this right because he's basically superhero generic what's it called the The thing where you put yourself in as the character.
The self-insertion.
Yeah, right. I guess not Mary Sue, but the dude one. Anyway, but it's like, he's the guy that you want to be, right? And then as it goes on and as he becomes just sort of not a person anymore, you sort of like, and he's in less scenes actually. You see less of him as like he goes into the desert.
Yep. And when he acts, it's much more like the thing happens.
Right. You become detached from him, right? Like, what happened to this guy? He's not. I don't know him anymore.
But then you get those little glimmers where he's like, "Oh no, as yet another of my friends become a creature."
Yeah. He's like, I can't let this horrible jihad happen. And it's like, oh, all right. He's still like a good person, wants to, even when he's like, my mom wants me to lead this jihad. I can't let it happen. And it's like, oh. Look at that. It's like, that's pretty, that's awesome.
Meanwhile, though, you get the impression that
Still being
Jessica
a good
herself
guy.
didn't really have the full knowledge of what the Bene Gesserit were trying to do, and that was a Bene Gesserit plan. Her plan was somewhat different.
She just wanted the best for her son, really. She wanted him to be an awesome duke and be awesome and strong and kick Harkonnen ass.
And she did actually legit love Duke Leto.
And Duke Leto legit loved her and just didn't marry her because political reasons.
Yep. I'm glad that the plot of the Harkonnen planted the seed and everyone thought Jessica was a traitor. I like how every character who mattered.
That was actually a terrific scene where Gurney comes in, he's like, you traitor. And he's like, wait, actually, we'll tell you how it went down right away. And then he's like, oh.
My bad.
And
Sorry.
it's like, how many fucking anime and other shit?
That's 10 episodes.
People don't open their fucking mouth and just tell someone what the deal is.
Well, when Hawat
and there's
comes
all
back
this
too.
drama. And look, we finally, you know what? I'll give Dune so much credit for that, right? Finally, someone comes in and drama is avoided in one scene because someone just tells someone everything right away.
Yup.
Good job, Dune. Also, all you people doing your stories borrowing from Dune, how come you don't borrow that? You bother every other fucking thing in Dune you steal from. The one thing you should be stealing, you don't steal.
Yep, you got the good guy, you got the early bad guys who are gonna turn good, and then you got the bad guy. Have those early bad guys just turn good like 3 pages in.
Right.
Like, oh, okay, we're on the same side. Let's go.
Whenever this good guy's fighting, give them a minute to talk and see if they just resolve their differences when they air the truths. And then if they still can't resolve, then they can fight, right? But don't have these good guy fights for no reason.
Well, it happens later, too, when Hawat shows up at the end.
Because someone refuses to tell someone something.
Remember Hawat out of nowhere is like, by the way, Jessica, I thought you were the traitor, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Then he died.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, I have this poison. They were going to betray you. I killed myself instead. Eat a dick, everybody. I'm out. He drops the mic and falls dead.
Yeah.
I like that. I like Hawat a lot because he just played the Baron the entire time.
But yet again, Hawat is a character who's there a lot in the first few chapters.
Yep.
Goes away. You don't really see him. You hear about him a few times. Maybe there's a scene where he talks to the Baron, and then there he is at the end.
Yep.
And it's like, where were you? People talked about you more than I saw you.
I liked Yue too because they didn't have the mystery, as the reader right away, he's like, he is the betrayer.
I think it's like maybe even page 1. They're like, oh, by the way, Yue is the betrayer.
But then you keep reading and you're just waiting like, when's he going to betray?
How's he going to betray?
And you see everyone else
and they add an additional mystery. It's like, oh, Yue has this special training.
Yeah.
How could he possibly, this special training prevents him from betraying. How could he still betray with the special training? And then they reveal the reason that he was able to betray despite the training.
Yep, the power of his love was greater than his conditioning.
Yep.
But none of the characters know that. So all the characters, there's all these infuriating scenes, but in a good way, where people sit around, they're like, who's the betrayer? Well, it can't be Yue. And everyone's like, duh, it can't be Yue. So
he has
who
special
else?
training. It can't be.
Who else is it? And you're just like, God, I just want to tell you people.
Well, because you have this narrator who just tells you everything.
But I also like how his betrayal is so just direct and simple. It's like, oh, I turned off the shield and killed some people.
Yeah,
that's it.
I just turned off the shield at the right time.
It's just literally the shield comes down.
Because the thing is, they're so good. There's a little bit, especially in that beginning part, that nerds also love, that procedural security part, right?
Yep.
Where it's like, you get a little bit from the Ghost in the Shell and such, where it's like, all right, we're going to tell you every detail of how we're protecting ourselves and how we can't be betrayed, and it's like, and that makes it more interesting of like, oh, how are they going to get through this? Like, it's sort of like, oh, here's a dungeon. Look at all the traps in the dungeon and how dangerous it is. How they going to get through there?
Yup.
And then learning, get the details of how to get through is a shit that nerds love. Nerds eat that shit up.
Yeah.
So there it is. They give it to you.
So I like the Lady Jessica because she was actually probably the most complex character because she had a lot of very different conflicting motivations.
Right. And then it's like, then she has the baby, and then she has the mistake with the baby.
But she's also...
She has all these different phases, right?
But I like how instrumental she is. Like, Paul would have just died without her. And anytime
Absolutely.
a few times Paul's like, I don't need you, Mom. And she's like, son, you don't even know the half of it. You think you know the voice? Let me show you the fucking voice.
Yeah.
But the only thing that bothers me about her, and it's kind of because I read The Wheel of Time not that long ago and I read this, what is with old sci-fi and like male and female are these intrinsic traits of being that are like a big part of the fundamental reality of the universe.
Mm-hmm. It's because dudes who wrote old sci-fi books didn't get a lot of sex action.
Yeah.
Nerds had a lot of sex fantasies.
Wheel of Time is like,
haven't you
there's
seen the
lady
pictures?
magic.
Haven't you seen the photos from like the 70s sci-fi conventions?
Yeah.
Right? Those are really like half orgy, half sci-fi convention.
But at the same time, I do appreciate that Jessica was a complex, very powerful character, arguably one of the most powerful characters in the book.
I would actually say for a sci-fi book written at this time, it was restrained compared to, say, a Robert Heinlein, which is what you get when you just let it go.
Yup.
You just let it go. Right?
But I also like how
Herbert was probably holding back.
all the things you expect, like Jessica surprised me a lot too because she was the one character who had the most complex motivations. So she would do things that surprised me. And I don't think any other character surprised me at any point except when Fenring at the end was like, no, we're cool. I'm not gonna fight you. We're good.
I think he knew he'd get his ass kicked.
Yeah, I think he might have won.
Well, he just
Remember in the footnotes, we find out that he is like one gene short of being Paul Atreides.
Yeah, he's super badass, but I like how he retired to like the Grey Gardens with the Emperor.
Yeah, the prison planet is going to become a paradise planet.
They were best bros.
Aaliyah, the little sister. I didn't know anything about her, actually.
Well, I'd never heard of her before. Actually, one of the few characters I'd never heard the name of before reading. But
there was a little girl
I
character
like
with
how
blue
she's
eyes.
basically going to be... She's basically the magical girl.
Yep.
It's like putting her in this book, it's like she did some stuff, but really, it's just creating her in this book so that she clearly plays, a large role in the future.
Her great scenes are just when the other Bene Gesserit, like the Reverend Mother, is like, she's an abomination, and Jessica's like, eat a dick.
Yep.
And when she's kidnapped and she's sitting with the Emperor and the Baron, and she's just sort of fucking with both of them. Mm-hmm. It's like she's like a child, like in the Prince of Nothing book. There's the one young Dunyain during that one part.
It definitely reminds me. There are a lot of anime characters again that remind me of that.
Yeah.
Like the psychic girl in One Punch Man, or there's a lot of those. Person who looks like a little girl or is a little girl, but like. You imagine them like sitting on a fence, like Humpty Dumpty, kicking their legs and like sassing everybody. That kind of scene.
Yep.
That kind of
But
deal.
I like how the Emperor thinks he's got her as this powerful leverage and tool against Paul, and he's using her to mess with the Baron because the Baron's done at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But then she starts scaring the Emperor, and the Emperor's like, you know what I could do to you? And she's like, no, you won't. You're going to die. You're all going to die. You're all fucked. Hawa we talked about, Halleck we talked
Let's talk about that Emperor, right?
All right, the Emperor.
The Emperor is actually like, he's not like, he's not super good. He's not super evil. Like he's an Emperor. He's obviously like, he's not a chump. Like, you'd think like, a lot of times you get an Emperor who's a chump or something like that.
There's a reason why his family's been in power for 10,000 years, and it's not just that the Bene Gesserit made that happen.
Right. It's like he's actually pretty good at being an emperor. He's like really confident, and he's doing what he can do. And the really only reason he goes down is because Paul too strong.
Yep. But I also like how he definitely has some honor, and he actually likes the Duke a lot.
Yeah, he
hates the Baron. Yeah, but he's forced into helping the Baron.
Well, yeah, but it's like Fenring and Leto are like would be his best buds. Right?
Yeah,
it's just he's the emperor, so he can't be best buds too much with anybody.
Well, because he's not really human anymore in the sense that he's almost just like this archetype of that static society. Mm-hmm. So there's almost a side argument to be made that people like him, like all the leaders of these houses, they also lost their humanity because they're just instruments of this static system.
Yep.
Like no one's human anymore. In trying to remain human, no one is human.
Also, it's pretty much like the guild really runs the show.
Yep.
Right? It's like you can't.
Of course, the guild also, as we learn, sucks at what they do.
Yeah.
Like they messed up real bad. They could have had everything, and they're actually the biggest chumps, I think, in the entire book.
It's weird, right? It's like everyone's bowing down to the chumps, but really they're chumps too.
When Paul goes to them in the end, he's like, "I'll destroy it all." They're like, and you think like they're gonna be like, "No, you won't," but they can see the future, and they look at each other and they're like, "Ah, shit."
Yep.
He got us.
But that's the thing is, that's another thing this book does that nerds love, right? Is it has this sort of this fake science magic system, right? We talk about this in Prince of Nothing also with the
Gnosis.
the Gnosis, right? So instead of the Gnosis, there's this sort of biological thing going on with how do the worms work and the spice and what's
the little makers, and there's all these hints. That's
and
the one mystery
water and
that is.
How could we have not have even mentioned water until now?
So, because we're not Fremen, we don't understand the importance of water.
Right.
But
so there's they created this whole fake biological system, which is basically the magic system of the universe.
Yep.
That for nerds to eat up on, right? And
but at the same time, it's a really sort of like there's the story. It's kind of like how Spice and Wolf is about like debasing silver and currency.
Yeah.
This Spice and Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
This book is about. Like just basic environmentalism and like cycles on planets and things.
Yep. But so, they tie that in there, right? And by bringing that in, they created this sort of like dependent cycle so that like, yeah, they need the spice, but it's like the guild is in charge of everything because they control the space travel. But
even though technically the CHOAM company is.
Right, well, that's another, we were talking about
the
that in a
second. The CHOAM thing is the coolest, scariest thing that we don't actually know a lot about.
Right, so that it's like, but the spice comes from this planet with the Fremen on it, and it's like, so everyone's sort of interdependent in this circle, so no one can really just be on top of everything and just run the show.
Yep.
Right? And that's what allows for that fundamental structure that involves like this ecological thing, right, is what allows for this political intrigue and wheelings and dealings of people trying to basically get ahead, and get leverage against the other people in the same system, right? So yeah, the CHOAM thing, that's the one weird thing. You have an emperor who rules.
Yep.
Right?
You've got the Landstrad and like the nobles.
You have Bene Gesserits have sort of like infused the entire galaxy with like their religion-ish and their what do they call it?
Oh, whatever they like precede the religion. What do they call that? I already forget.
I forget what it's called. But basically they went around everywhere preceding like these knowledge and superstitions into everyone.
So if some random Bene Gesserit, like when Jessica's just like, oh, okay, I see how they treated the myth. If I say these words, they'll think I'm a goddess or whatever. Let's rock.
Yeah. And then you have the guild who controls all space travels.
Yep.
Right?
So I get the impression.
And then you have all these dukes and barons who are like like different kings basically underneath the emperor because the emperor can't just run everything, right? And then you have this Landsdrad.
Well, that's the noble houses. That's like the counterbalance. That's like old pre-Magna Carta style nonsense. That's like the nobles who are ostensibly together equal in power to the emperor, and the emperor nominally rules at their consent.
Yep.
That kind of system.
Like the commission of the NFL rules the consent of the owners of all the teams.
Yep.
Right?
'Cause that's how they have the convention. Like, if you use an atomic, we'll destroy your entire planet.
Mm-hmm. And then you got this CHOAM company.
That
right?
everyone has shares in.
Everyone has shares in the CHOAM company. If you have enough shares, you get a directorship or something in the company.
Missionaria Protectiva.
Yeah,
thank you, Lord Kruk.
Right, that's
Krunk.
what it's called. Right? So so you're a duke and you're represented in the Landsdrad, but you also have a seat at the CHOAM company.
But not all dukes do.
Not all dukes do, but like a seat at the CHOAM company is the most valuable thing. But it's like, and the CHOAM company own the guild? Not really.
But look, even at the end.
But the guild has a bunch of seats.
Even at the end, when Paul Atreides is ready to be the god emperor of all, he still is like, I can get Gurney, like a directorship in the CHOAM company.
Yep.
Like you can't just give him an entire paradise planet. You're the God Emperor. How dangerous is this company, and what exactly does it actually do?
And when there was one really important scene, the biggest thing revealed, I think, about the CHOAM company, which I'm sure gets revealed much more in other books,
Yep.
is that there's a scene very close to the end when the Emperor's already landed on the planet and he set up his little temporary castle.
Yep.
And they're looking to see like what flag he puts up. And because he doesn't put up, if he puts up like the Duke's Leto's flag, it's basically acknowledging that Paul runs the shit.
And if he puts up the
And
Harkonnen,
if he puts up the Harkonnen flag, it's like, all right, let's fight.
Yep.
But he could have put up his own flag, I guess. But he puts up the CHOAM flag, which is like, all right, okay. So it's like, is it just? Who are the other directors of CHOAM? Like, what the deal? It's not super well explained
and
what's
it just
going on there.
sounds sinister and terrifying, whatever it is.
And they even tell you what the letters stand for. I forget, but
it's just like a normal corporate sounding. You know what it is? It's one of those megacorps in like a Netrunner.
But there's
universe.
only one of them.
Yeah.
And it runs everything. Like what? Like what's the deal? Like I don't know.
So the Baron Harkonnen, like there are heel characters in stories that Frank Herbert went out of his way to make the Baron the most vile possible being, to make you hate him over literally anyone else in these books.
Is it fat shaming for the fat? It's like,
yeah, like they make him fat to a degree that requires science fiction.
Yep, to hold up his fat off the ground,
They make
because
him
otherwise
a
he can't walk.
pedophile.
Yep.
They make him a murderous pedophile. And
he doesn't seem to have any motivation other than selfishness and greed.
Yeah, he just wants Fayed to take over when he dies.
Because he likes Fayed and doesn't like.
And
he just wants what he likes because that's what he wants because he's a bad guy. He doesn't have like a reason or any nobility or anything. He just wants power and money and what he wants.
You know what he kind of reminds me of in Prince of Nothing? There's the Emperor.
President of our country.
Well, yeah. I was gonna make
only way more confident.
Yeah, I would actually rather have the Baron Harkonnen than Trump, because the Baron wouldn't fuck up on purpose.
Sure.
Like, the Baron might fuck up, but look who the Baron would have succeeded if it weren't that he was the least dangerous person in the danger room.
It also doesn't seem like the people who living in Harkonnen were like living a bad time until the Baron spends all the money. He spent all the...
Yeah. He bankrupted himself just to fuck over the Duke.
It seemed like his kingdom, or whatever you call it, that a baron has, was actually not really the worst place, but he spent all his money in his treasury to fuck up the Duke Leto, the good Duke, and then that ruined his own country.
Ostensibly, it was because he wanted Fayed to become the emperor, and he had this whole plan.
It's like, there aren't any like, I'm sure there might have been, but you don't read a lot in this book.
Hanet Ober Advancer Mercantiles.
Sure. It doesn't talk a lot about, for example, like the Baron, genociding his people or anything like that. Like, it doesn't seem like it was bad.
But you do see the slave pits and the fights. Like,
those weren't Harkonnen people.
Yeah. Well, kind of like how in the Sardaukar, the ones who survive the prison planet live like god kings, except that they're expected to die if there's a fight.
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's like, all right, look, you're basically a god king when you're not working, but your job is awful. It's like being an underwater welder. You get paid a fortune.
And you might die.
And you might die in your job because it's super fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
Or like being a professional athlete. Yeah. When it's your job, you have to train and do all this ridiculous, intense labor for a very short, 10, 20, maybe 15 years of your life. It's horrible suffering. But when you're not working and when you retire, you're going to be a multimillionaire.
So I kind of liked Peter DeVry, like as a weird sort of like he seemed like, I thought he was going to be the square boss, like the real villain.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then he just went down like a chump, like right away.
Yep.
And that was just, he was interesting. He reminded me of the assassin guy in The Prince of Nothing. And he reminded me of another...
This is the Baron's original Mentat, right? The one that wasn't as
the
good.
Wikipedia just
he wasn't as good as Hawat, so Hawat replaced him.
He was also addicted to spice and like super nihilist. And
I thought he was addicted to something else that wasn't spice.
No, you're thinking of, I think...
the other guy.
You're thinking of Harfa Nefed. The captain of the guard is addicted to that music drug.
Because the captain of the guard just like dies randomly, so the Baron just picks a new captain of the guard
All I can picture
in a very Darth Vader-esque
I was
scene.
about to say.
Admiral Niet.
Admiral Yakin Nefid.
Yeah, but the Admiral Niet basically is addicted to some kind of drug, and that's how the Emperor.
Something like that.
It seems like it was basically like some sort of cyber drug where it like involved movies and VR.
Yeah, he'd like take a drug and then listen to weird music at the same time.
Yeah, something like that.
That guy, like,
I'd be addicted to that.
Yeah, that guy was not the worst. Like, he was surprisingly competent.
Yeah.
And the things the Baron was mad at him for were not like the most important things.
No.
Fade was actually the most dangerous to the Baron. I like how the Baron's only goal is to make Fade the Emperor, and the Fade just keeps trying to kill the Baron.
Yeah.
Like, this family is
Fade's not fat and disgusting. He's like, oh my God, my disgusting uncle. Well, he's in charge. I hate him.
Fade's just like ultra ambitious, and that seems to be his soul.
Yeah, Fade didn't actually seem to be. Usually, when you see like that story of someone trying to put their evil nephew or son into power, it's usually the nephew or son is also evil.
Yeah.
In this case, it's like actually, if he succeeded at getting Fade Routha
he'd probably
power,
be better than the Baron.
It's like Fade Routha didn't seem like he was bad. Like,
no, he's bad.
In combat, he would use dirty tricks sometimes, but they weren't really dirty. They were just like, yeah, I poisoned my other knife because, that's how
I like how there's that moment where he's like, Paul poisoned me. He used poison. And Paul's like, yeah, you also use poison, you piece of shit. We're both cheating. Don't pretend.
Yeah, but it's just like, he doesn't really seem like a bad person.
By a generally objective moral sensibility, but in the context of this fucked up society, he was by far one of the least worst people there.
Yeah, if he would have just killed and replaced his uncle, he might have even just like stopped, being evil.
It almost makes you fantasize like if the Emperor and the Fenrings and Fade and Paul and Leto were all just friends and Jessica, like they could have run the world a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Who else did we talk about? Princess Irulan. You basically never.
Oh, so I gotta talk about Princess Irulan,
but
right?
I like how you get all her writings.
Oh yeah, at the beginning of every chapter, there's a little, a quote from something, right? And a lot of books do this.
Prince of Nothing does that.
Sure, but the vast majority of the quotes, not 100% of them, but like 90+%, are from some fictional book that's never been actually written. And the author of that fictional book is Princess Irulan. And you learn as you read these, some number of chapters in, Princess Irulan is the Emperor's daughter.
Yep.
And she wrote a lot of books, and apparently she's writing a lot about Paul, right? She knows Paul intimately.
And the whole book, all I'm thinking is, when's she gonna show up?
Right, is like, so there's some princess named Irulan.
She's gonna survive.
She's lives long enough to write all this shit about Paul, and she's super close to Paul and knows everything there is to know about him. So as Paul's going along, and she's not even in the picture whatsoever, except for these pre-chapter paragraph quote things, it's like, when are they going to meet? How did they get close? What's Paul doing with this other person? Does this person become Princess Irulan? Like, because what's her name? The girl that Paul actually loves. Chani, right? It's like, is Chani going to become Princess Irulan? Like, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, I had no idea.
And then at the very end of the book, it's like, here's Princess Irulan, here's her deal. And it's like, Paul marries her just to become emperor in name and whatever, and doesn't give a shit about her, but she's just going to be there all the time because she's now the empress or so whatever it is.
She seems pretty dangerous, too. Like, from what little
she
you
seems
know.
like way awesome and way good at, like, they're even like, oh yeah, you don't have to worry about her. She's just quiet and cares about writing. Just ignore her. Just technically marry her because that way you're marrying the emperor's daughter, technically speaking.
So let's talk about the Fremen a little.
So
spice is just oil, right? This is all like a really big metaphor for oil in the Middle East powering the international machinery of capitalism.
But what about them worms?
The worms are part of that cycle. I wonder if the worms, like,
it's even though they explain the cycle to you, right? They don't actually fully explain everything. Like, is the spice A, worm shit?
Yeah.
B, worm vomit?
I think it's
C,
shit.
disintegrated worm, skins? Like what, and then it's like, oh, well, if you mix the spice with water, you get this other magical poison shit. And it's like, how does that fucking work?
I think there's a much more important point there.
Is this, the spice smells like cinnamon, so you just put it in all your fucking food? It's like, oh my God.
One, like, Liet Keynes and the ecologists and the scientists and the Fremen all understand how this works.
Yep.
And if anyone else had spent any time studying it, They could have also figured
They don't
it out.
allow them to study it.
Yeah.
And because they're providing the guild with spice, they create this. They create this. Frank Herbert created this structure where the guild desperately needs the spice. The Fremen give the spice to the guild. Therefore, the guild protect the secret of the spice, right, and so forth.
Yep.
And the guild knows the Fremen can destroy all the spice.
But because water is toxic to the worms,
it's really good.
or to the this is like the makers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect that if you make the planet habitable and livable, the spice disappears.
That's why you have to make only part of the planet habitable.
Because there's
and
already that
livable.
other plot about hell planets make the most dangerous people.
Yep.
You need hell planets to fuel the hell machinery of the society.
Or you just don't make any dangerous people.
Yeah, but then you also lose
But there
the fuel.
are dangerous people already existing, so they're just going to run everything unless you make other dangerous people to fight them.
Yep.
And it just so happens that the story was in such a situation where the Saudarkars are the most dangerous people who actually use their dangerous abilities, and then they encountered the Fremen, who are actually the most dangerous people, just weren't revealing or using their dangerousness. And then this is the story of, the beast is unleashed. Here they go.
But there's also that very simple, obvious metaphor of spice is oil. People exploit the oil because it runs
Paul
the
is
machinery
Lawrence
of
of
the world.
Arabia.
Yep.
He goes into the desert. He comes back, and grabs the
Yep.
desert people and fights against the man.
But I like how Liat Keen seems to be pretty, he seems like actually the most baddest ass of all the characters, because in that dinner party scene, he's like the one who's in the most control.
Mm-hmm.
Those smugglers are pretty cool, but I don't have a lot to say about them. The Tuiks.
You don't see them too much.
Yeah.
They don't do a lot.
You feel like they're cool, and you like Gurney and the one guy, one of the two, like they hang out, and there's all these scenes with them, but...
The one thing I do is I want to say is that before reading the book, right, I knew the word Fremen. I knew the Fremen were the mysterious desert people, but I got the idea before reading this that the Fremen were literally mysterious desert people. Like you really don't see them. They're sort of cloaked figures in the dark, and you don't
like the Ale were for the first half of the Wheel of Time.
Right, exactly, right? It's ooh, what's their deal? But no, it's they just walk up yo, I'm Fremen, how's it going?
Lord Crunk is giving me the details of the life cycle of the sandworm in here.
But anyway, it's just yeah, I'm a Fremen person. How you doing? Right away.
Oh, you want to know how a still suit works? Let's go.
As soon as they land on the planet, it's there's that basically housekeeping Fremen lady, and she's just
Moppy, Mapes.
Yeah, Mapes. She's just hey, how you doing? And it's oh, I guess Fremens are just out and about. And
but then you get the backstory of the Fremen were a chased, genocided people from somewhere else and were forced onto this planet.
Right. But it's super long ago. But I'm saying I had the wrong impression. I had the right impression about Baron Harkonnen.
Yep.
And,
I thought the Fremen would be inscrutable, and they were just literally well, we're in the Fremen now.
Yep.
Fremen.
Yep.
The worms. What's the worm riding? No, they literally just put hooks on their worms and ride them.
Yeah.
Really straightforward. It's not even magic. Oh, if you hook it open, it tries to keep it out of the sand, so it rolls over on his back, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, it doesn't want to rub its hooked area on the sand. That would hurt.
Yeah, if I got hooked, I don't want to rub my wound in sand. Yeah.
Even though I'm a sandworm.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't want my hooked wound to be out in the air even. I want a Band-Aid on it or something. I'm not going to rub it against my bike seat.
Yeah, and it's the worm doesn't really notice that there's a tiny person on it. It doesn't give a shit.
So I guess, because we've talked a lot, so the only other thing I really want to point out is that what I thought was really interesting is that so little is described in detail that it is very hard to visualize literally anything except for a few people's faces and a handful of the devices that they use.
Yeah, they don't really
the landscapes.
They
The
describe
landscapes are beautifully
Gurney's.
described.
What's Gurney's guitar thing called?
A balisette?
Yeah, it's a real instrument, a balisette. Yeah, but they describe that
What does
balisette
that
more than
scooper
they
look
describe
like?
him.
The ornithopter, even they describe it, but I've seen so many different renditions how people drew it.
Oh yeah, they talk about the spice collecting thing. I imagine it looking basically like the thing that the Star Wars again. Jawas. The Jawa.
Oh, yeah.
I imagine it being a big Jawa tank thing.
I imagine it more like this giant scarab beetle just scuttering over the land.
Maybe but it was big and it had treads and it was hard to get
But
it out of there.
landscapes and planetary stuff and were described in detail, and so were specific things like some still suit stuff. But most things were described based on how they matter to the people, but not in any actual
They
detail.
would describe what a thing did, what it was named, how it moved, but not what things look like. What
Is
things
it
look,
blue?
There are not a lot of adjectives and those sorts of words used to describe what things looked like, what shape they were, what
Yup.
color they were,
But
their
that
texture.
explains why all the art I've ever seen related to Dune is super abstract and weird.
I kind of like that art style, though.
I do. Like the art style in the board game, the Avalon Hill board game.
No,
That's
it's
great.
all right.
That's good stuff.
But yeah, like you search for Dune art on Google image search, like you see a lot of good stuff.
Yep.
So there's a movie about this that
Which I think we should
haven't,
watch.
I haven't seen. People say like a lot of crazy shit about it, and
Well, David Lynch did it. So.
yeah. So positive or negative, I feel like I have to see it for the same reason I had to read the book.
Easy Thursday show.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, but people say it's bad, but I still to this day don't know if they say it's bad because they love the book and it's not perfect, or what.
I mean, I like a lot of movies that are.
I also want to see that Jodorowsky's Dune documentary because I feel like that could have been the good Dune.
Oh, there's a documentary about the Dune that they didn't make.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about that too.
Yeah, I feel like we should watch that too and do a show on it.
I think, but in a way, does making a movie about it ruin the fact that you have to use your imagination for all of these things that aren't described and how they look?
I feel like it would
does
be
giving them an actual concrete, picture, right, sort of take that away a bit?
I feel like if you animated it instead of doing live action and made it kind of really abstract.
The
and
problem is
trippy,
you can't. Who are you gonna get to do the art? Mobius died.
yeah.
Who's gonna draw it?
We've got to do a selective breeding program for 10,000 years to have the Mobius reborn. The Mobius quitter act.
I feel like Mobius is really the only art style that goes to Dune, right, in my mind.
But I enjoyed reading this book. Like, I don't have any regrets.
I don't, obviously, when I was young, I guess I couldn't even get through the first chapter, and I said I didn't like it. Now I'm not, I'm not gonna say this is it's not great. It's not like my favorite. I'm not a Dune nerd now or anything. I'm not gonna read any more Dunes.
I would have tried the next book had so many of you not warned me away from them.
Maybe. If I, but it's like, it was worth reading. I think if you're a nerd, that you should read it. For many reasons.
It's got a lot of great moments. Like I have 10 or 15 more of those little moments that I really enjoyed. But
right, I mean, we haven't even begun to cover the amount of things that you can. The book is large, right? But you can still read it quickly. And because it's so large, there's so many things to talk about if you have a nerdy kind of mind. So it's fun. It's enjoyable. It's worth the almost no money it costs to buy and not a lot of time it costs to read.
Yep.
But I can't say that this is it gets credit for being so legendary.
Well, it did
I don't
a lot of
know
things that have not really been seen together in
I don't
science
know
fiction.
if the actual I don't think its actual quality is worthy of its legendary Hall of Fame status, but I think that it's unprecedentedness, right? And its influence is what gets it into the Hall of Fame status, right?
I think we can stop right there.
Okay.
I think it's a good show.
What did he say about worms?
There's a lot here.
Is it worm shit or is it
Let's see. Interviews, blah blah blah.
so we can read all the things?
So this is spice in the presence of a dead worm restarts the cycle of the sand trout, the little maker. So that guy.
But where does the spice come from to begin with?
He didn't say that here.
I think what is the spice? Is it worm shit? Is it sand?
You know what? There's actually a wiki that we can just go read. Literally,
That's true.
that's one thing that.
That's really one of the only things I'm curious about. Is
Yeah.
what is
Well, so
spice?
I went to the
Is
wiki.
it a disintegrated dead worm?
I went to the wiki because what I wanted to know is the Talaxu tanks and the Golas.
The stuff from the books we didn't.
I just wanted to know what those were because they were in the game.
That's
So
the only thing in the game that's not in this book.
La La La, I don't think actually happens in this book.
La 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 was in this book.
Oh yeah, it was in the appendices.
No, it was in the book.
When did they say La La La?
There was some point.
I saw it in there. I just don't
it
remember
was
where.
During some Fremen ceremony with ladies or something. They said La La La.
Because in the game, it's just that card.
Yep.
All right, I think we're done. I'm gonna get some food at the
Yeah.
He Be No.
Oh shit! Let's
It's
go.
time.
Oh my